You know, people make it sound like living alone in old age is some kind of sentence. Like the moment you're by yourself, you're supposed to sit quietly in a rocking chair, stare out the window, and wait for the Grim Reaper to pencil you in. Please. Living alone isn't a sentence. It's a blank canvas. It can actually be the perfect chance to shake things up, try new tricks, and even laugh at yourself a little. The truth is, it's not about killing time. It's about owning it. Over the years, I've come across some pretty clever, sometimes downright funny ways seniors turn solo living into something special. And we're not talking about the obvious stuff like read a book or take a walk. Nope, these are the kinds of ideas that make your days feel like they've got a spark again. So if you're ready to make living alone feel less like an empty house and more like an adventure playground, stick around, because I've got some gems for you. And hey, if nothing else, you'll at least get a few new excuses for why you still haven't fixed that squeaky door. Number 1. Give your days a theme. When you live alone, the days can blur together faster than a soap opera rerun. Monday feels like Wednesday, Wednesday feels like Friday, and suddenly you realize it's been pajama o'clock since last Thursday. That's where giving your days a theme comes in. It's like sprinkling seasoning on otherwise bland soup. Think of it as giving each day a little personality. Maybe Mondays are Movie Mondays, where you rewatch a classic like Casablanca or Die Hard. Yes, it is a Christmas movie. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Tuesdays could be Takeout Tuesdays, where you finally try that Thai place you've been side-eyeing. And Fridays? Well, you could make them Fancy Fridays, where you put on your nicest shirt, pour yourself a glass of something classy, and strut around your kitchen like you're at a 5-star restaurant. Except the maitre d' is your microwave. I know a lady named Gloria who decided Saturdays were salsa Saturdays. Not the dancing kind, though she did try that once and accidentally knocked over a lamp. Nope, she made it about salsa tasting. Every Saturday she'd whip up a new kind, mango, corn, jalapeno, and then judge it like she was on MasterChef. She even kept scorecards. Her kids thought she'd lost it, until they tasted her pineapple salsa and begged her to jar it. The beauty of themes is they give you something fun to look forward to, no matter how small, and the sillier, the better. Waffle Wednesdays, sock mismatch Sundays, or even no phone Thursdays where you go old school with a crossword puzzle and a landline call. Life's a lot less boring when every day has its own flavor. So go ahead, theme your week. Because when every day has a role to play, you'll feel like the star of your own show. And honestly, it beats forgetting what day it is and having your calendar app judge you. 2. Find your third place. All right, let's talk about something that can completely change the game when you're living solo. Finding your third place. And no, this isn't some hidden treasure map situation. You're not Indiana Jones here. Your third place is simply that sweet spot that's not your house, not your old job, but the place where you show up, people recognize you, and you don't have to scrub your floors or offer anyone tea. Your first place is home. Your second place used to be work. But let's be real, retirement kicked that one to the curb. That's why you need a third place, or as I like to call it, your get me out of my pajamas headquarters. It's where the world remembers you exist, and more importantly, where you feel like you belong. I knew one guy whose third place was, of all things, the local diner. He'd slide into the same booth every morning, order the usual, and by the time he'd finished his eggs, he'd caught up on everything happening in town. Who was selling a car, who was mad at the mayor, and which waitress was secretly dating the cook. That booth was his version of Cheers. Everyone knew his name, and he didn't even have to wash dishes. Then there's Martha, a retired schoolteacher I met, who made the laundromat her third place. You'd think, really? A laundromat? But listen, she wasn't even doing laundry half the time. She'd just sit there with a book, chat with folks folding their socks, and offer advice on stain removal like she was the Oracle of Tide. She said, "It's the one place I can walk into and know I'll leave having talked to someone new." That was her social hour. And honestly, It worked. The beauty of a third place is you don't have to plan anything. No invitations, no cooking, no stressing. You just show up and people start to expect you. Suddenly, you're part of a little ecosystem, whether it's the library, the coffee shop, the hardware store, or the park bench with the good shade. And that's what makes solo living lighter. You're not just sitting at home talking back to your television. You've got a spot out in the world that says, "Hey, we saved this chair for you." So if your days at home ever start feeling too quiet, too heavy, ask yourself, where's my third place? It might not be where you expect. But once you find it, solo living stops feeling isolated and starts feeling like you've got a wider circle, even if you go home to a quiet house. 3. Collect stories, not things. You know what happens when we live alone for a while? Stuff sneaks in. Every drawer, every shelf, every corner starts whispering, "Hey, maybe you'll need me one day." Before you know it, you're knee-deep in coffee mugs from 1982, 5 sets of sheets you never use, and that bread machine your cousin swore would change your life. The funny part? None of it actually makes life richer. But you know what does? Stories. Real. Lived in. You had to be there kind of stories. Because when you look back years from now, you're not going to chuckle about owning 6 spatulas. You're going to light up when you remember that night you stayed up past midnight swapping ghost stories with your neighbor, or that spontaneous road trip you took just because the weather was good and the tank was full. Collecting stories doesn't mean you have to do grand cinematic things. It just means saying yes a little more often to the moments that could end up being memories. Maybe you join a group hike even though you've never been the outdoorsy type, and you end up laughing until your sides hurt because someone fell in the mud, and yes, it was you. Maybe you strike up a chat with the cashier, and they tell you about the tattoo on their arm and the wild adventure behind it. Boom. That's a story. That's a nugget you can carry and retell. I know a senior gentleman who made it his mission to try one new thing every month. Sometimes it was big, like taking a painting class, even though he swore he couldn't draw a stick figure. Other times it was small, like ordering the weirdest thing on the diner menu just to see what happened. Each little yes became a story. He'd tell them at the barber shop, at church, even to his grandkids over the phone. And here's the magic. When you collect stories, you don't just entertain others. You remind yourself that your life is still unfolding, still full of chapters worth telling. Things sit on shelves and gather dust. Stories live in you. They travel, they grow, and they connect you to people. When you live alone, it's easy to feel like your days are quiet and repetitive. But when you shift your focus to collecting stories, suddenly you've got fuel for your next conversation, warmth for your next lonely evening, and a little grin when you're sitting with your coffee thinking, "Man, I can't believe I actually did that." So yeah, skip the extra spatula. Say yes to the experience that'll make a great story later. That's the kind of collection that never clutters your closet. 4. Redecorate just for you. One of the sneaky perks of living alone? You're the boss of your space. No negotiations, no compromises, well, maybe we should go with beige because it's neutral. Beige is dead to you now. This is your kingdom. Want a recliner that looks like it got stolen from a 1980s man cave? Get it delivered. Want flamingo wallpaper in the bathroom? Order 2 rolls. Who's going to stop you? The throw pillow police? I once knew a retired guy named Dennis who turned his entire dining room into a mini billiards hall. Guess how many formal dinners he hosted after retirement? 0. Guess how many games of pool he played with his neighbors, his grandkids, and sometimes just by himself while blasting Willie Nelson? Hundreds. That pool table paid for itself in laughter. And then there's Eileen, a widow in her 70s, who went a totally different route. She transformed her guest bedroom into what she proudly called the Purple Palace. Purple curtains, purple rug, purple lamps. Even her chair had a velvet purple slipcover. "My husband hated purple," she told me. "Now I swim in it." She said just walking into that room made her feel 20 years younger. Redecorating doesn't mean you have to spend a fortune or turn your house into Vegas, unless you want to. Sometimes it's as small as buying dishes that make you smile, swapping the living room furniture around, or hanging up photos from your favorite trip instead of leaving them buried in a box. It's giving your home a little wink of personality. Your personality. And here's the best part. When you decorate just for you, your space becomes more than four walls and a roof. It becomes a reflection of your story. Every corner says something about who you are, what you've lived through, and what makes you happy now. That's powerful. So if you catch yourself walking around your house thinking, meh, same old, maybe it's time to shake things up. Add some color. Get the funky lamp. Turn the spare room into your painting studio, your train set empire, or your yoga cave. Make your space sing your song. Because here's the truth. When your environment feels alive, you feel more alive. And when you live alone, that little lift of joy every time you walk into a room you love, that's not decoration, that's medicine. 5. Create a memory drawer. Here's the truth. Memories don't belong in dusty photo albums you only crack open when your niece visits and asks what you looked like in the 70s. They belong somewhere you can reach for them in a heartbeat, like a memory drawer. Think of it as your personal time machine, minus the flux capacitor and weird DeLorean. All you need is one drawer, a box, or even a shoebox if you're fancy, where you stash the little things that instantly spark joy. Old concert tickets, love letters, photos where your hair looked suspiciously like a bird's nest, but you were smiling like you won the lottery. A napkin with a doodle. A postcard you forgot to reply to in 1993. All of it counts, and don't underestimate the power of these little scraps of life. I know a guy, Martin, who has a drawer with nothing but menus from restaurants that don't even exist anymore. You'd think, big deal, some old menus. But the man lights up every time he opens it. He remembers the booth where he sat with his late wife, the waiter who always brought them extra fries on the house, and the time he spilled soup on himself and she laughed so hard she cried. That drawer isn't holding paper, it's holding love, humor, and history. The best part? You can use your memory drawer as an instant pick-me-up. Bad day? Open it. Feeling a little too quiet in your house? Open it. Trying to prove to yourself that, yes, you did once have sideburns that could rival Elvis? Open it. It's like having an antidepressant, except it's legal, free, and doesn't come with a warning label that says may cause dizziness. And here's the kicker. It's not just for the past. You can keep adding to it. Toss in a goofy selfie you took last week, the receipt from a day trip you loved, or the wrapper from that amazing chocolate bar you swore you'd never eat in one sitting, but did. Because your memory drawer isn't about clinging to the good old days. It's proof that your life is still full of stories worth saving. So go ahead, build yourself a drawer that laughs with you, cries with you, and reminds you that you've lived a pretty incredible life. And who knows, maybe someday someone else will open it and think, wow, they really did own way too many Elvis mugs. 6. Use micro-volunteering. Now this one's a gem most folks don't even know exists. When people think about volunteering, they picture long shifts at the food pantry or standing for hours at charity events. And let's be honest, as we get older, that's not always possible. Knees ache, backs stiffen, and sometimes just the idea of driving across town is exhausting. But that doesn't mean you can't still give back. Micro-volunteering is basically volunteering with a light switch. You flick it on when you can, flick it off when you're done. No guilt, no stress. It's those little good deeds that fit neatly into your life without swallowing your whole schedule. For example, you could spend 15 minutes writing encouraging notes to kids in hospitals through an online project. Or maybe you knit. Knit a couple of hats for premature babies. Don't knit? No problem. You can literally spend 10 minutes answering someone's language question online or helping transcribe historical documents so future generations know we existed and didn't just eat potato chips. I once met a lady named Ethel. She said she didn't have the energy for big volunteer work anymore, but she still wanted to feel useful. So she joined a project where she listened to recordings of old folk songs and helped type out the lyrics. She said, "I'm basically karaokeing for history." That's micro-volunteering in a nutshell. You get the joy of being helpful without needing a cape or a 40-hour work week. The cool part? These tiny acts of kindness add up. You do a few here, a few there, and suddenly you've got this invisible resume of good deeds that actually makes the world a little brighter. Plus, selfish bonus. You feel good after. Even science says helping others boosts your mood, lowers stress, and gives your brain that warm, fuzzy glow. So instead of doom scrolling for the 100th time, why not try micro-volunteering? It's like giving the world a high five. Quick, easy, and it leaves you feeling way better than binge-watching videos of cats fighting cucumbers. 7. Have a signature solo celebration. Here's the thing. Most people wait for birthdays, weddings, or grandkids' graduations to pop open a bottle of bubbly. But why should you? You've survived another Tuesday. You fixed the leaky faucet without flooding the kitchen. You finally figured out the TV remote after pressing literally every button. That alone deserves fireworks. That's where having a signature solo celebration comes in. It's not about throwing a party for the neighbors. It's about inventing a little ritual that's just for you, something you do when life needs a personal high five. It could be as simple as baking yourself a chocolate cake at 9 p.m. on a random Wednesday, or putting on your nicest shirt, even if the bottom half is sweatpants, and toasting yourself with a glass of wine. Heck, maybe it's blasting ABBA in the living room and dancing like the furniture is your backup dancers. I know one woman, Evelyn, who has what she calls her Champagne Fridays. She lives alone, doesn't care much for clubs or fancy dinners, but every Friday evening she pours herself one glass of champagne and toasts to whatever the week threw at her, good or bad. Some weeks she's celebrating paying off a bill. Other weeks she's just celebrating the fact that she didn't strangle the cashier who talked her ear off at the grocery store. Either way, it's her ritual, and it makes her feel alive. The beauty of it is you get to pick what feels special. Maybe it's treating yourself to takeout from the place you love, but usually save for special occasions. Guess what? Being alive is a special occasion. Or maybe it's lighting that expensive candle your kids gave you that you were too afraid to burn because it smells too nice. What's the point of saving it until you're 103? Burn it now. Enjoy it now. Your solo celebration doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be yours. Something that, when you do it, makes you grin like a kid sneaking cookies before dinner. Something that says, "Yep, I may live alone, but I know how to treat myself better than anyone else can." Because here's the truth. Life is too short to wait for someone else to throw you a party. Throw one for yourself, even if it's just you, your recliner, and a slice of cake big enough to frighten a cardiologist. 8. Practice future you planning. Here's the thing. Most people think planning for the future means only writing a will, arranging paperwork, and maybe figuring out who gets the good china. Boring. That's like only preparing for the credits scene of a movie instead of enjoying the actual story. When I say future you planning, I mean making decisions today that your older self will one day high-five you for. Think of it this way. Imagine you're sending little care packages to yourself down the road. Maybe you set up a Future Friday fund, where you tuck away a bit of cash each week, so 2 years from now, you can finally take that bucket list train ride through the Rockies, or splurge guilt-free on the world's best recliner. Or maybe you start a silly tradition, like recording a short video message to your future self every birthday. When you play it back 5 years later, you'll laugh at your haircut, your fashion choices, and your very serious prediction that hoverboards would definitely be real by now. I knew a guy named George who took this to the next level. Every new year, he wrote a letter to future George with advice, encouragement, and a few sarcastic reminders. One year, he literally wrote, "Future George, for the love of all that's holy, don't try online dating again unless you enjoy paying $19.99 a month for rejection." When he opened it later, he laughed so hard he said it was the best pep talk he'd ever gotten. And here's the kicker. Future you isn't some stranger. It's still you. You're the one who's going to benefit from those small moves you make now. So instead of only worrying about the what-ifs, flip it. Think about the little gifts, plans, and cushions you can send ahead. Future you will thank present you for being thoughtful, and maybe forgive you for all those questionable haircuts. 9. Curate your background companions. Here's a secret. Living alone doesn't have to mean living in silence. In fact, silence can get pretty loud after a while. You know the kind. When the refrigerator hum suddenly sounds like it's plotting against you, or when the clock ticking feels like it's mocking how slowly the afternoon is going. That's when having background companions comes in handy. I'm not talking about adopting 20 cats, though hey, no judgment if that's your dream. I mean the voices, sounds, and rhythms that keep you company without requiring anything from you. Some folks leave the TV on, not to watch, but just to have a voice in the room. Others swear by talk radio, old jazz records, or even a live stream of ocean waves crashing. It's like filling the house with people, but none of them will ever ask you to lend them $50 or drive them to the airport. Take George, for example. He's in his 70s. Leaves alone, and his house always sounds like an old diner because he keeps a 1950s rock and roll playlist on shuffle. The man makes scrambled eggs to Elvis every morning. He told me once, "It feels like the house has a heartbeat." That's background companionship at its finest. Or Margaret, who cheats by keeping audiobooks running all day. She says she doesn't really listen. It's just nice to have someone's voice filling the house. She laughs and says, "It's like Jane Austen moved in with me and she never complains about the thermostat." Here's the funny part. You can curate it to match your mood. Want energy? Put on live concert recordings and pretend your living room is Madison Square Garden. Need calm? Cue up a rainstorm track and pretend you're in a cozy cabin. Feel lonely? Pick a podcast with two people who argue like an old married couple. Boom! Instant family drama without the dishes to wash after dinner. The trick is to make your background companions feel like chosen company, not just noise. You don't have to settle for whatever rerun happens to be on. Curate your space the way a DJ curates a party. Because when you live alone, the vibe of your house is completely up to you. And let's be honest, it's a lot more fun when the only person complaining about your music taste is you. 10. Make your home a playground for curiosity. Most people think of their home as a place to rest, but when you're living alone, it can and should be more than that. It can be your personal playground, your little laboratory for curiosity. And no, I don't mean turning your kitchen into a full-on chemistry lab unless you want the fire department showing up. I'm talking about sprinkling tiny experiments and, why not, projects into your space so that every room has a spark of discovery waiting for you. Like this. You've always wanted to try painting? Set up a corner with a canvas and some paints. Doesn't matter if your masterpiece ends up looking like a potato with eyebrows. That's part of the charm. Or maybe you've secretly wanted to learn a few phrases in Italian. Leave sticky notes around your house with the words. Imagine making coffee while saying out loud, "Buongiorno, cappuccino." You might feel silly, but guess what? Silly is fuel for the soul. I knew a guy, Harold, who started collecting random musical instruments online. Not fancy ones either. A kazoo, a harmonica, a recorder like the ones kids use in elementary school. He called it his Hall of Noise. Every time I visited, he'd pick one up and attempt to play it. 90% of the time, it sounded like a goose in distress. But the other 10%? Magic. He said, "It's like tricking my brain into staying young. I never know what sound will come out next." That's curiosity at work. The beauty of this is you don't need a plan. You don't need a schedule. Just set your home up so little sparks of curiosity are everywhere. Maybe your coffee table has a puzzle always in progress. Maybe your bookshelf has one weird book you never thought you'd read but gave a chance. Maybe your kitchen holds a spice you bought because you couldn't even pronounce the name. The point isn't to be good at everything. The point is to give yourself little pockets of surprise so your home never feels stale. You don't walk into a museum expecting to master everything you see. You walk in to explore, to poke around, to leave with a sense of wonder. Your home can work the same way. Because here's the truth. When curiosity lives in your house, boredom doesn't. Living alone doesn't have to mean living small. It's not about counting down the days. It's about filling them with your own kind of magic. Whether that's turning your home into a curiosity playground, creating little solo traditions, or even curating which voices keep you company in the background, you get to be the director of your own daily show. And hey, if you ask me, that's pretty freeing. No one's here to tell you the music's too loud, or that dinner can't be cereal 3 nights in a row. You get to set the rules, break them, and laugh about it afterwards. If this gave you a new way of looking at solo living, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's free. It helps this channel grow, and it means you won't miss more tips and stories like these. And if you've got your own tricks for making solo life a little brighter, share them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. At the end of the day, living alone isn't about being alone. It's about finally having the space to live life on your terms. And that, my friend, is something worth celebrating.